What is going on, guys? Welcome to Stock Talk with Nico Criticos. Today, we're going to be doing some stock analysis for Adobe stock and why I am bullish on this. I've been buying this stock for quite a while now. As you can see, I have 13 shares here, and this is probably the position I'm down on the most, close to 30% here. And I'm kind of debating buying more of this stock like tomorrow, but I already have a decent sized position built out in this, so I don't know if I'm going to do that yet. But I'm going to walk you through all the research I did and why I am bullish on this stock. So let's start with their numbers. Adobe is now all the way down to a $110 billion valuation. Forward PE for this year of 11, only 11. And I'm sure everybody watching this video understands why Adobe stock is down, so we don't need to spend too much time on that. But the revenue has gone up, okay? No problems there whatsoever. The revenue has been super consistent, up to $23 billion. Net income, perfectly strong, nothing crazy, but it's headed in the right direction, $7 billion. Then we have total performance obligation, which is pretty much just a sign showing how much money they will make in the future, how much future contracts do they have. Also, fantastic. $22 billion. Okay, now I don't know exactly over what period does that get realized. I'm not sure for this stock, but I'm sure it's a year to a couple of years. Free cash flow, 9.8 billion. Also a phenomenal number for a company only a little over 100 billion. EPS of 17. Okay, keep in mind it's only a $264 stock. Debt to cash is not great right now. It's roughly 6 and 6, so nothing terrible. This one is very nice here. Shares outstanding. They bought back almost 6% of shares last year, which is a huge plus for the stock. And I think it also shows that they are confident and bullish in the company themselves. Now, here's the valuation, right? We go to the last 5 years, the stock has never been this cheap. Okay, and especially in the last 10 years, never been this cheap. This stock normally trades at 45 times earnings, and we are down to a 15 right now. Okay, so the stock is incredibly cheap, and of course, it's because of possible AI threats and other companies like Canva and Figma stealing their market share. Now, I have this thing I made here, going through the pros and cons of the stock and of the company, which are slightly different because I separated the stock because valuation and share buyback, like I just went over, share buybacks, those are just impact the stock. That's just related to the stock. It's not really talking about what the company is actually doing. So here's what I've come up with. Okay. The pros of Adobe, especially related to their threats right now, is number one, copyright protection. This is a big one because as you can imagine, companies like Coca-Cola and the NFL and Adidas and all these Disney, whoever else uses Adobe, they are producing lots of pieces of content for the marketing department, and they are not going to want to be worried about whether or not these materials they used is copyright infringement, or if it's, if they're going to get fined for it, or if they're allowed, they don't want to worry about if they're allowed to use something. A lot of these other AI, the LLMs and these other sites, you can't always guarantee that. You can look at into, these other sites, Canva, Figma, Midjourney, all these other ones that can help produce and edit content. And it's just something to look into because Adobe already has that taken care of. They're the most trusted in the industry, and it's been that way for a long time. So that's number one, which is a big one. Now, the next thing, I haven't researched this yet, but the next thing to research would be how big of a moat is that? That's a big moat now, but how big of a moat will that be in the future if other players like Canva or somebody else or ChatGPT, whoever, if they also can acquire that? I don't know how hard it is to acquire that, to acquire that protection, that insurance, where if one of these big enterprises does get, in trouble, or I mean, they're not going to get in trouble because Adobe owns the right to all their content, right? But if there was something, Adobe pretty much has the insurance to back them up and say, hey, we own this. There's nothing There's nothing wrong here. There's no problems. I'm not sure if it's hard for a company like Canva to get to that point or what. That would be the next piece of research. But I mean, right now Adobe has that as their moat. The next thing would be Gen Studio. And Gen Studio, as you can see here, is an AI-powered enterprise designed to streamline the entire marketing content lifecycle from ideation, I don't know how you say that word, and creation to deployment and measurement, which is another thing that sets Adobe apart. Then we have the full stack ecosystem here between creative and document. This pretty much means the software for creators like Photoshop, Illustrator, Lightroom, all that, in addition to document, which means PDFs and editing those and being able to send those to other employees, stuff like that. I know personally for my company, last year when we had to make a label for one of our food products, we definitely use Canva for a lot of things. However, there are times when you have to have Acrobat or you have to have when you need to vector the artwork for your design or your label, you have to go through different software, Adobe software. You can't use Canva to do that because it doesn't produce the right file type and it doesn't edit the artwork the way it has to. So that's one thing. Then we go back to my list here and we have, okay, sale. We already went through the sales, free cash flow, and total performance obligation all are increasing. Like I said, it's the industry standard, right? It's what's taught. It's used in schools. It's used at giant enterprises. It's used at the NFL. It's just the industry standard of what, major corporations and enterprises use. And it's what's taught in school. It's what professionals use. Um, like I said, file compatibility, that's a big one because if you're working on a team at a company, you have to be able to send those files across. The precision means Adobe can have the details and allow you to do things artwork wise, editing wise, that other sites like Canva can't. Adobe also has already integrated AI, right? I believe they're working with Google's Nano Banana, and that's another argument where, sure, Canva and these other AI platforms can produce images, and I mean, you could try to edit an image on these sites. To be honest, the editing is not very good, and even the production of the pictures and stuff that these sites come up with, Canva and ChatGPT, they're not very good. I mean, they sometimes they're good, but it's super unpredictable, super, all over the place. You don't know what you're going to get. It's very hard to edit it. The AIs don't listen well. There's lots of different things. So Adobe's already integrating that into their platform. It's not like they're gonna fall behind or you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. The cons, sure, Canva, like I said, Canva, Figma, and these other AI, these large language models can steal some market share. One thing is now, here's where I want to pull this up. Here's the Canva. Okay, Canva has 260 million monthly active users, up from 2024 when they had 220 million. So they're growing at what? What is that? A little bit over, what is that, 15% growth or something year over year. So they're growing. I mean, they're doing good, right? I don't want to say they've totally reached their full market share. They have a market share of 12%. And the other important thing here is that 95% of Fortune 500 companies supposedly are using Canva. This is okay. Well, this is not what we want, but here we go. Figma, same thing here. Nearly 95% of Fortune 500 companies are using Figma. Okay, I thought that was interesting. Figma's market share in design tool stands at 40%, leading the category. Okay, that's always, subject to how you want to interpret that. Over 10 million individual users use Figma, more than doubling from 2022 over 3 years. Okay, that's good. So again, revenue surge of 48% from prior year. So the numbers are good. They're still growing companies. Can they take more market share? Sure, it is possible. And if you don't know, Adobe a couple of years ago tried to acquire Figma and they blocked it because it was too much of a monopoly. Now, something like that tried to happen again in the future. I don't know if it would be any different. Can another company buy Figma? There's a lot of different things. But the bottom line is, sure, these companies can take some market share from Adobe. But number one, why hasn't that happened already? And there's so many different ways to look at this. Number one, if they're actually going to be taking away a significant amount of business from Adobe, why hasn't that already happened? right? I've been using Canva now for years, at least 3 years, 4 years, probably longer. I've been using it longer, but just these last 2 years is when they integrated AI and stuff. But these companies, I've never used Figma, but these other companies, they've been around. People have already been on the platform. Canva is nothing new. Um, and so it's that paired with the fact that Adobe is integrating AI. I don't see why they would fall behind. They're still the industry standard. And I mean, the only way to look at this is that enterprises and professionals, people who want high quality, high detail stuff, they're gonna go to Adobe, right? People can also use both of them. That's also another option. If you're talking about people who are trying to save money and stuff, then yes, they're gonna go on Canva over Adobe. If you're just making a quick YouTube thumbnail or something or a quick flyer for your concert or something, then yes, Canva is the way to go, right? But if any sort of professional who wants detail and deep control over their art, whether it's video, photo, whatever, lighting, whatever it is, you're going to go to Adobe. And again, it's the switching cost, it's the network effect, it's the ecosystem of having all those different software features of, the lighting, the editing, the photos, the videos, all that stuff. So I can see them taking market share away from Adobe. I just don't see it being anything like the end of the world or like, the stock is pricing in a way worse event than what is going to happen. And again, like the stock has been falling for over 2 years now. And, sure, AI is changing and it's gotten better and it will get better, but it's like, why is the stock down from over $600 to 260 now? So, I mean, you're looking at what the stock has fallen, what, over 65% over the last 2 years? I mean, that doesn't seem appropriate for the situation right now with the competition and especially the fact that Adobe is growing their numbers. Their sales perform their contracts, their net income, free cash flow, EPS, everything is up and everything looks good. So I just think if we would have saw a decline in revenue by now, because if everybody was going to drop their Adobes, if all the enterprises, I don't think are going to do that for all the reasons I listed before. But if all these small creators I mean, I never used Adobe, but I have a couple of friends who used it for movies and editing and stuff. If all these creators or small marketing professionals were going to drop their Adobe subscription to save money and go to Canva because Canva can replace or Figma and replace some of the features that Adobe has. Why hasn't that happened over the last 2 years? And it looks like, I mean, these AI features have been out for a while now, and Canva and Figma have been out for a while now. So to me, it looks like Canva and Figma are growing faster than Adobe. But Adobe is still growing. So I don't really see the issue there. But the math I came up with based off of who Adobe's customers are, how much money they make. So the majority, I believe, I forgot the exact number. I think it's 60% or something of Adobe's customers actually are smaller, either just people like regular creators, small marketing professionals, or very small teams of professionals. Um, but that does not account for the majority of their revenue. The majority of their revenue comes from these enterprises, which the enterprises, there's like a couple hundred, I think there's 150 or something. There's a couple hundred enterprises and hundreds more of these mid-sized businesses. And so altogether, this accounts for about 60% of their revenue. 60% of Adobe's revenue is coming from these bigger businesses that are going to need Adobe. So it's pretty much that. I think those are all going to stay. Those are actually going to probably grow in addition. I mean, they're growing at whatever, 5 to 10% a year. So those will continue to grow. Plus all of the smaller creators and stuff, I can see some of them dropping it. Again, though, why hasn't that already happened? But let's just say half of those creators are going to drop Adobe in the next couple of years, just so they could use AI and Canva and Figma. Well, I would say half is reasonable. 100% is not reasonable. I think at least a lot of them are going to keep it, right? So I'm saying like I think 20% uh market, 20% market share, 20, not 20% market share, but 20% sales loss is realistic, but not factoring in for growth of new clients, customers, enterprises, and businesses subscribing to Adobe. Um, Not accounting for if Adobe raises their prices or changes their, the way they charge these enterprises. Because if they're offering value or and that's the other thing is like is these other AI competitors, is it making it more of a commodity where Adobe's gonna have to actually lower their prices? I don't know about that. You could look at it either way because AI can actually be a thing that adds value and you could charge more. Or maybe it's charged by like how much you use it or something like that. I don't know. So that one is hard to judge. Is Adobe going to make more money off of those enterprises in the next 5 years or less? I don't know. So we'll keep that flat, right? That one could go either way. But I think they're going to add more businesses to their client list, right? They're going to add new customers. So I'm saying I can see a 20% revenue drop is realistic. I say a 40% revenue drop, but look, if all the small creators drop their subscriptions, that'd be like a 40% drop. I don't see that happening. I don't see every single, there's like 100 million or 80 million people that subscribe to Adobe. I don't see them all, every single person dropping it just so they can lose all of the everything Adobe has to offer, top of the line, industry standard, most professional in detail software. Every single one of them is going to drop it. When you have things like Gen Studio, you have the copyright protection, you have the full ecosystem, all this stuff. N- Even half of them, I don't know if even half of them are going to drop it. It might only be a 10%, 15% revenue drop. So that's the way I see it, is I think roughly 25, maybe 25, 30% of revenue is vulnerable to being replaced. I say 20, maybe 15% of that actually, like there might be a decline over the next couple of years. But I mean, Adobe's also growing though. They're adding more customers. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, so the most frustrating thing about this is, okay, the stock's been dropping for 2 years. It's obviously way over exaggerated. But the thing that doesn't make any sense is that how can the stock drop for two plus years is a long time while they're growing their numbers, right? Their EPS has gone from 16.7 last year, 18.2, then 20.8. Like this stock should be well over $400 a share. Like $400 should be the minimum for this stock. So it's that's the frustrating part that makes no sense is how long can this go on where the stock price does not reflect the business at all? Not even close. Normally that happens for like 6 months or 9 months or something. This has been over 2 years now. So, and I understand the AI landscape is changing and growing and stuff, but at some point we have to, you know, confront reality and say, okay, Adobe is not losing customers, their numbers are improving, and there's nothing wrong with the business, or, you know, that's it. So I think the stock's gonna go back to like 600, at least 500. I'll say that I think the stock is going back to $500 a share. So I think from here you would like double your money. That's kind of the way I see it. But that is it for my Adobe stock analysis. Let me know what you guys think down below, and I will see you in the next video.